Oh, good evening to you. Hello, everyone. My name's Janice, and I'm the owner and creator of the Glamour Club. And we are pioneers, we're activists and catalysts for change, and we are set up to eradicate loneliness and loneliness caused by social isolation. So we are an event that is going virtual. And on the 10th of the 10th, 20, we're holding a tea at 3 as the grand finale as part of Worthing Mental Health Awareness Week. So that's us, but I want to hand you over to my lovely guest, Matt. Matt, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, please?
Hi, good evening. Yeah, thanks a lot for having me, Janice. My name's Matt. I'm on the team at a project called Dadler Soul that operates out of Worthing. We are an organisation with the mission of tackling social isolation and loneliness. And we do this by creating communities that start conversations and create friendships and ultimately increase family stability. So we do that by hosting play dates. We've done online play dates. We get dads and kids together and teach them new stuff. We use tech, music, play, circus. But ultimately at the core of it all, it's about getting all of the dads together. We are notoriously a tribe of people who are very good at saying we're okay when we're not. And, you know, that's something that has to change. So what we do is we get all of the dads together, and it's an anything goes group hug. You know, it's all about supporting one another and being able to own our emotional difficulties, be able to say when we're struggling. It doesn't mean that everybody else has the answers. We don't get bombarded with like, okay, go and do this and go and do that. Then sometimes you just need somebody to hear you and really know what you're feeling. And that's the really beautiful thing at the heart of what we're doing at Dadler Soul is that we're building a tribe of socially conscious men and families that are working now to support men's mental health.
Oh, it's wonderful, Matt. And I just wondered if you would mind if I told everyone how we met.
Absolutely. Fire away.
Well, we have got a lot to say, and I want to read it back about 6 years because your partner, Kate from Boy Passion, and you're also Amarok UK, and you are fire performers. And I remember being down at the Coast Cafe, which is on the beach in Worthing, and I was feeling very lonely, and I was just sitting. And you all of a sudden all appeared from nowhere with hula hoops and fire breathing apparatus and a fire poi. And as the sun went down, you did. I think you were only practicing, but to me, I just sat. I've got a photograph someone took of me from behind, watching Kate. And I just sat there and I just thought, I really want those people to be my friends, you know? So you probably, you probably don't know that, but yeah. So,
I remember talking to you. You sat on the wall at Splash Point.
Oh, really? You actually remember that?
Yeah, the big white wall at Splash Point. You sat on the wall, and I remember chatting to you briefly. I don't remember the guts of the conversation. I'll own that. But yeah, definitely. What a wonderful day that the universe put us all in the right place. Go on, tell us.
Yeah, well. So we reel forward 6 years, and I actually put myself forward and thought, I know my son had learned to do the poi, and I was very impressed, but I never thought that I could do that. So I went to one of your poi classes, like 6 in a row. Oh, I was so happy. I mean, it just really is relaxing and just totally wonderful for me, you know. But I didn't realise that you do all this circus performing as well. And I asked a query, you know, whether I could hire you as a stilt walker. So every single Glamour Club, you come now, don't you? And you are my butler on the entrance to welcome people in.
Yeah.
So that's how I know you in a nutshell. But on a more serious note, Matt, can you tell me about a time in your life where you've been really lonely and how it made you feel? Why you're championing it? You know, you're taking up the reins, you and the other members of your organisation. You know, because it's a difficult thing to do for men to say that they're lonely and things like that. So, can you tell me how it all came about, please?
So the real story of how Dadler Soul came about belongs to somebody else. That's Dan Flanagan, our founder. He'll be able to tell you in some more detail kind of how Dadler Soul was born. But reflecting on your question about a time in my life where I've experienced loneliness, there have been many, is the truth. And quite often, in some of those moments of loneliness, I wasn't even able really to identify that I felt lonely. So one of the things that I talk about, actually, the difference between social isolation and loneliness is that if you put me in a room on my own, I'm socially isolated. However, I can stand in a room full of 100 other people and feel absolutely lonely. And that's really the core of the difference between the two. I first really experienced loneliness as a teenager. I had a big circle of friends. I had quite an active social life, in that I was going places with people. However, I'm able to look back retrospectively now and acknowledge that there was a space, there was a hole. I felt lonely. Something was missing from my life, and it was a depth of meaningful connection. Now, without going into too much detail, because we really don't have the time to go all the way down the rabbit hole, at that phase in my life, it led me in a really dangerous direction. I was self-harming, and I was turning to illegal substances for support to fill that hole that I could feel within me. That lasted for quite some time, which then led to an urgent call for help. My family, very luckily for me, my family stepped in and intervened and ultimately saved my life in that moment. So that was the beginning of a recovery journey, which involved a lot of talking therapies and counselling, that it enabled me to identify some stuff, some areas in my life where I really knew that I wasn't embracing opportunities. And so I got a bit braver, and I ended up at 18, I moved over to Spain and started working for Air Tours Holidays. Running their
brilliant.
clubs. And it was the Matt then is completely a different Matt. You know, I couldn't speak to a room full of people. Part of the interview for the job was to do a 5-minute presentation, and it struck the fear of God into me. It really did. And I somehow blabbed through it and got the job, and then found myself in a role where I needed to stand on stage with a microphone and address a room full of 500 people. It was a sink or swim moment, and I'm not going to say completely luckily for me, because actually it took a lot of personal work on my part in that moment. But I swam and kind of rediscovered myself. So that was a great period. Then I met somebody in Spain, moved back to the UK. We started a family living up north, and it was an interesting time. I was young. I kind of just turned 22 when my first son was born. So it's kind of this big grown-up responsibility for a guy who, I might be 22, but I'm not an adult inside. So it was kind of quite overwhelming. That was a lonely time. Definitely as a father, you know, not having, I grew up without a dad. You know, my grandma was my dad, and sadly she passed away about 6 months after my first son was born. So I felt incredibly lonely in that sense, in that I didn't have other dads to kind of go, hey, look, I've got this kind of stuff running through my head. I knew it had hit me emotionally when I watched Independence Day and cried. There's a bit in that film where there's this guy who sacrifices himself and flies into the big ship and destroys it. And I cried my eyes out watching that. And it was all to do with the fact that I'd become a new father. So that was really overwhelming. And I muddled my way through that, I'd say, probably for the first 5 years. You know, I was working in childcare. I have childcare qualifications, so I understand kids. It wasn't about that. And then my mental health really took a downward turn. I chose to stop working with children because I didn't want to divide myself between my own kids and my work. And speaking of children, lucky you for getting a new bike. I'll talk to you about it in a minute. Is that all right? So yeah, what happened then was I found myself working in a bathroom showroom, and it just wasn't doing me any good. I was sat at a desk, I had sales targets to hit, and I was hitting them and exceeding them, and I really wasn't happy. And I found myself leaving for work, and my route to work was through like a little copse with a lovely stream that ran through it. And I would get as far as this place on my route to work and not go any further, which I kind of kept that to myself for as long as I could. But obviously when the end of the month came, there was no money because I hadn't been working. So then it was time to really sit down and go, okay, this is what's been happening. And I really had a complete breakdown and I stopped working. I didn't know really who I was or where I was at. And that's a period where I went through a lot of therapy. I was put on antidepressants. Some of them worked for me, some of them didn't. And kind of years into this journey, I'd been off work for I think about 5 years, and I was assessed and given a mental health diagnosis of mixed personality disorder with concurrent emotional intensity disorder, which suddenly gave me loads of stuff to go away and read, thinking this is the manual to your life. It wasn't. It was a minefield of words, and none of them meant who I am. So cue another big chunk of years spent in talking therapies. I did DBT for 3 years, on and off of CBT for more courses than I can even remember, doing lots of studies in mindfulness techniques. And it kind of got me to a place where eventually I was able to move away from the medication and was relying solely on changes that I was making to my behavioral patterns and you know, the things that I was sharing with people in order to get more support. That was a real turning point. That was a great period for my mental health because I felt like I was in control. You know, experience has taught me, and I have enough other people that I know with mental health issues, that I'm not saying medication doesn't work. It's everybody has got their own personal makeup of what they need as support. And for some, it's medication and talking therapies. Others, it's just medication, and others, it's just talking therapies. I'm really glad that I've found things that I can do as lifestyle practices, like circus skills, like mindfulness and meditation throughout my day, martial arts practice, things like this. I've been able to kind of recenter. And it doesn't mean that I don't have bad days. It just means that when the bad days come up, I don't get lost in them, if that makes sense. It's,
totally.
You know, and I've got to be honest and completely own it, because it's what I preach that guys need to do. 2020 has been a real struggle. I've gone back into some really dark places in my mind with fear, with worry for the future. And you know, I really bring it back. There's this wonderful saying that says, yesterday is ashes and tomorrow's only wood. Today, the fire burns brightly. And I've really clung to that. 2020 has been a difficult year for the world. And, you know, we're not through it all yet, but actually I just keep bringing myself back to, where am I sitting today? Where am I standing today? What do I need to do? What am I able to do to make today as okay as it can be? And, you know, that's come from years and years and years of learning these different techniques. So yeah, if I want to share a message about that, it's, let's own our stuff and let's look into it and learn these techniques. There's so many practices, you know, there's yoga, Tai Chi. If that's not for you, then it might be, you know, some of the guys we know take up boxing and come away from it and you think, wow, that's a violent sport. Like, is this a good direction for that guy to go in? And then they come back and they say, do you know what? It's totally recentered me. I'm not angry at home anymore. And, you know, so don't be afraid to explore. And like you, Janice, try new things.
Yeah, I'm always trying new things, that's for sure. This is one of them, actually, Matt. It's been absolutely a pleasure to listen to you, Matt. Unfortunately, we haven't got much time, but, you know, thank you for sharing. I really like the fact that I know when we have our huddle at the Glamour Club at 11 o'clock with all the volunteers, and we all introduce ourselves and say a little bit about ourselves and what we're here to do. And when you spoke, you could hear a pin drop back. You know, you just are saying things that lots of people haven't heard before, particularly from a man. So thank you so much for sharing, Matt. And can I just finish with one thing? If you see someone who hasn't got a smile on their face, then give them yours.
Absolutely. I should have put my
thanks, Matt. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Janice. And before we sign out completely, I just want to say how much I love what you do at the Glamour Club.
Thank you.
Stilt walking is my work. However, when I come and stilt walk for you, it never feels like work. And that's a beautiful thing.
Thanks, Matt. Thank you so much. Cheers. Thank you.